It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I am so excited to bring you this guest. For those of you who are just tuning in, welcome to Her Success Story, and most importantly, welcome to our nonprofit series. During this time of the year, it is always really important to me to highlight all forms of nonprofits and take this holiday season as an opportunity to learn how we can give of ourselves to organizations that make a difference, or learn from various organizations that are doing amazing things in the not-for-profit world and take them back to the organizations we're part of already to learn and grow. So today I have Joanne Weiner. Joanne has worked for the IRS for 35 years before starting her forensic accounting practice in 2013. Her practice, J.L. Weiner and Associates, LLC, consists of tax controversy resolution, matrimonial disputes, and business litigation. I will say Joanne is a licensed enrolled agent, a certified tax resolution specialist, and a certified fraud examiner. So listeners, you're probably saying, so why is Joanne on the nonprofit series? Really? What has Ivy lost it? But let me tell you, Joanne has started a 501c3 nonprofit called Women, Words, and Wisdom, which celebrates women each year with a panel of power celebrating women themed for National Women's History Month, whatever that theme is that year. The panel of power showcases acknowledges presenters who discuss challenges women face and work to overcome. Knowledge is shared and information is inspired. A board of directors has now been formed with the goal of raising funds on behalf of Women, Words, and Wisdom for a scholarship to be provided to 2 students per year. Now, since this is written, I know Joanne has done some amazing things, and just this fall, they had one of their most successful Women, Words, and Wisdom events ever. So, Joanne, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, an amazing background. Where the impetus to start with Women, Words, and Wisdom? You're an accomplished woman. You've been in business on your own. You have a strong history from the background with your IRS. Why this? Why now? Why you?
I've always, even at the IRS, always celebrated Women's History Month with some sort of program. I had ad hoc assignments, and every year always wanted to recognize women and highlight the struggles they've been through and encourage women to strive and to achieve. And so when I made that transition, I started J.L. Weiner and Associates. I also began to feel like you got to give back. You're a company, you're successful. You got to give something back. And the way to give it back, in my mind, was to help women. And I was really encouraged to help women in college because of my difficulty getting my education. And I felt it was so important for women who are in financial need that were struggling not to drop out of school, to get that experience, the college experience, and to finish their education. You have to have an education to do well. So that was the goal, to give back and to do so, highlighting women, highlighting women's history, and raising money for scholarships for women. So when Women, Words, and Wisdom started, a mission was formed. And we have a twofold mission. And the first part of the mission is to bring topics of interest to women so they can make a beneficial life choice moving forward. The topic of interest, topics of the day that will affect women. And so we start in January looking at the Women's History Month, the National Women's History Month theme. And then we make a projection as to what really will impact women. And we know we're going to bring the topic out in October. So we have to project in January what we think would be really on women's minds and something we really need to bring to them in a conversation from experts. So you know what? If you are a dentist and I am having a child, I am absolutely not going to you to help me figure out about my child.
Right.
But that's how it goes. So we want to bring experts to women so that they can share their knowledge with women. Women can be in an open forum and ask questions and hear their voices and their questions. And they can then take that knowledge back with them, share it with others, as well as make a beneficial life choice for themselves based on an expert, not based on silly talk that isn't from an expert. That's the first part of the mission.
Okay. And the second part of the mission?
The second part of the mission is to raise money for college women that are in financial need based on federal level qualifications.
Interesting.
We don't just give money. What we do is we require these women to write an essay and then tell us about why they need or want, to have this assistance from us, what it means to them to get the scholarship. So they have to write a different essay every year. We make it very difficult, and we do so because life is difficult, because it's hard to be out there in the business world. So you got to start now. And you got to also, we've increased our requirements of these women over the years. The GPA has to be at a certain level. They have to write this essay. Like this year, for example, every year we honor Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was helped start the NAACP. She got the Pulitzer Prize. She did a lot of work about lynching. She brought lynching to the forefront and the wrongs of it. She had a hard life, and she always stood up for what she believed to be right. So we asked the students who applied to write about who was Ida B. Wells, what was the most important thing she did, and then who would she be today? And what would she be interested in? And so many of them said, we think she would be interested in women's rights. We think she'd be interested in fighting against gun violence. We think she'd be interested in equality. And those were the things that we were able to bring out of these students. Then we make them come to our event and read their essay to 107 people, and then talk about their issue and why this is important and why this scholarship is important to them. What will they do with it? What will it mean to them?
And this year you were able to surpass, you've granted 3 scholarships this year instead of 2.
We did. We were able to raise.
Congratulations. That's huge. Because that goes beyond it. It goes beyond a goal. It goes beyond it's not just achieving something, it's stretching past what you originally think you can do. And there's something so important there. I also know you were hit with an enormous amount of challenges this year in preparation. So, Joanne, in complete disclosure, this is a fairly new organization. You're learning as you build.
We are.
And what has this year especially, you had your best year yet, the largest event, the most money raised, and the biggest challenges. So how do you navigate that?
1 minute at a time. Like that.
Say, my friend. One step at a time.
People say, why are you doing all this stuff? And I said, well, the only reason anybody can do a whole lot, and for some reason, many women just seem to do a lot of things. And I always say it because you don't do everything at one time. So that is what happened. And I've learned a lot of lessons. I got to do some tax returns October 16th. Why would I schedule an event on October 19th? I don't know. I've also learned that, a lot of little lessons, committees should be a certain size. One person on a committee will never work out. So that's good.
One person on a committee is not a committee. It's a person.
Committee, or even 2, not a committee. So yeah, that kind of thing, you learn, and there are lessons you'll never forget, and you can share with others and let them, benefit from that. That's what happened. Tax returns had to be done. People got sick. People weren't going to be on the panel, and it all kind of happened at the same time. So you pivot and you rework a panel and you backfill for people who can't be there. And you have angels that come to you to help you figure out things you didn't know. Yeah. And it works out that way. And then when you finish, you say, geez, okay, you were lucky. That worked out good. And you learn for next year.
So for our listeners, there's so often I hear people say, I wish I could start this. I have this idea. I don't know where to get started. There's this need, but am I the person to do this? The organization is still fairly new, so I think you're the perfect person to ask and give this insight. When we have that idea that makes a difference, how did you get started with this? What was some of the first things you did, and what are some of the words of wisdom you could share forward?
That's so funny because once upon a time I felt that way. I felt I just don't know if how I should really start this. I don't know what somebody said to me, just start. Okay. I thought that was good. I did that. And then it's really funny how this all transpired. About 2015 is when I started the first one in private practice. And we were bouncing around. It was really just people who wrote books. We had just women who wrote books at Maggiano's for a dinner. And we talked about their books. Everyone talked about the books they wrote. And before we did that, we came up with a name and we called that event Women, Words, and Wisdom. And I said to all of the participants, we've come up with this name together. I'm going to use it. Okay. And they said, okay, go right ahead. It was just that simple, just keeping it simple. But I do think that there are steps that, I think you kind of have to know certain things, you have to have a certain level of investigation or review or study to figure out, the things, the first, second, and third thing that needs to be done. So the first, like if you're talking about incorporating, the first thing you need to go to the state to get the name, you got to know to go to the IRS to get your EIN. You got to then know you can go to the bank and get your bank account. That kind of stuff, you've got to either research it or ask someone for help. But as far as starting, and if it's something from your heart, you got to jump in. Sometimes you have to jump in and just begin. And I've always told people the path will reveal itself.
That happens to be so true. And I think one of the moments that are the scariest moments is trusting the path, trusting the reveal, having that idea, and then going with it. I could think back to my own career path, my own life, into numerous businesses of, yeah, I want to do this. And people would look at me like, you're going to do what? And they're like, well, how are you going to do that? And I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm going to figure it out. And being in that willing to, and know, there are so many amazing nonprofits, and there's so much to learn from looking and learning. And I have to say, there's a generosity in the nonprofit community of when you reach out to say, hey, can I ask you a couple of questions? People really show up.
I agree with you 100%. And I think that, we had a launch, we had an idea, I had an idea, and I was so fortunate that people all came forward and wanted to help. So we put them into a board of directors. We're working on our bylaws. I feel like people want to give you ideas, and I think you got to go with it and try what they say, and it will help you push forward. It's not until you, in my opinion, you really need to be a 501c, or you really need to have some organizational structure so that people will take you seriously. Furthermore, it helps if you're a 501c3 because people are willing to donate, because there is that tax attribute that they can write it off. And in certain, depending on the organizational structure, it's either going to be a deduction or a contribution that can be taken if they can itemize. But many times if it's, a company, they'll want it to be an ad, and, you have to work on that. You have to, have that awareness of, but the biggest thing is to listen to what people tell you and try to do what you can do. Try to give them that level of recognition that they've contributed. So you're following their suggestion and you trust them. The only thing you've got to watch out for, because I've had this happen too, is you can't let them make you stray from your path. If you have been approved as a 501c3 based on the mission you've set forth, you've got to stick to that mission, because you don't want the IRS or anybody to come in and say, well, you're no longer a 501c3, now you're a corporation, so pay the tax. No. Right. You cannot have those two attributes as my mission and then go off and do something else. You
So,
can't you've got to hold on to that. But I like to give people who make suggestions, I like them to win, and I like them to be able to contribute, and I like to do what they suggest.
so what have the ladies who have received the scholarships, have you followed them? Do you stay in touch with them? What do you learn from them as they go through their journey?
The funny thing, it's so funny when I heard them read it, I could cry. Ugh. I was so weepy. I thought, geez, just don't break down, whatever you do. So they were really lovely. They were very emotional. They talk about their life and they talk about their challenges and how hard it is for them. And they have put things into a testimonial, which you'll be able to see on the website. And they talk about having this money, how it will mean something to them being able to finish their schooling. But you know what else one of them said to me? During the pandemic, they said they gave up. They felt that nobody cared.
Oh, that when we think people don't care, it is so hard to move forward. When we
Yes,
have that little bit of encouragement, that little
it is.
bit of people who help believe in us so we can believe in ourselves,
Mhm.
is a massive, massive transition. And it
Massive.
gives us the encouragement to take that step in the snow kind of thing, in the mud, and move and put that one foot in front of the other. And we get our educations and we can build our careers.
100%. And she said that she felt no one cared. And when she saw this, it changed everything for her. And another thing is when we brought the students to read their essays, that was hard for them. They had never done that, and they had to practice, and they did it. And then they spoke. These are college students who learned, very well how to speak very well, practiced, wrote their comments. And then on the other hand, we had a conversation at the luncheon that not everybody would have agreed with. Some people felt one way and some people felt another. And what I put out there was a challenge to everyone at the luncheon to show students how we can agree to disagree, how we can express our opinions and know that everyone has the right to an opinion. Everyone's opinion will be heard and respected. So we all kind of helped each other that day. And we do that each year because we talked about things that were not easy to talk about. We talked about things like Equal Rights Amendment. We talked about things like impact on children from gun violence and from the pandemic. We talked about maternal care with some reproductive rights in there. And we open the best event is always when we open it up to the people and the participants to share their opinions. And so they were challenged to share their opinions and to ask their questions, recognizing we had some college students in the audience and having the students listen to how adult women and men, there were men there, express themselves in a way that they can still respect each other and listen and learn.
Oh, there's so much to be learned from that in life. And what a beautiful and amazing example in today more than ever before, to have people in the room who see different points of view and to learn and respect somebody else's point of view and not judge, and still work together to get really important things accomplished. So Joanne, honestly, hats off to you, truly from the bottom of my heart. I have to go here. How can our listeners learn more about women, words, and wisdom today?
If they would just go to our website, they can get a vision of all of what's happening. It's womenwordsandwisdom.org.
Joanne, and how can our viewers or listeners learn more about you?
I would love for them to look me up I'm on the web. It's jlweiner.com. And also they can email me anytime at womenwordswisdom@jlweiner.com.
Love that. Well, thank you for joining me here today on Her Success Story. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ivy. It's been great working with you.
So listeners, this is the time in this show that I say the same thing every time. So do not be surprised. Take a moment and think about the conversation that Joanne and I just had. What were the key moments that resonated with you? What were your takeaways? What was meaningful? Write it down somewhere. Could be your phone, could be a piece of paper, whatever floats your boat is fine. But then make that decision. What action are you going to take based on what you've taken away? That's how, as a group, we can change the world. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining us. And please feel free to share the nonprofit series and today's interview forward with your peers, colleagues, and other amazing people. The more we educate, the more we make a difference. See you next time.